Joining us this week is Robert Schmitz. If you have not seen his YouTube channel, I highly suggest checking it out. The link will be in the description below.
I'm so happy to be here. This is about the best moment we've had as Bears fans all season long. Like, for once, it feels as if everybody's opinion on how the future can work out for Chicago feels like it's starting to meet in the middle, where we're not bad enough for anybody to reasonably cheer for number 1 and number 3 anymore. We're not good enough for everybody to be sold and super duper toxic about like, this is the way going forward. And if you think anything else, you're silly, right? And now we're all on the same page. Let's just win some games, baby. And the Bears catch a flagging Browns team at the perfect time with an untested quarterback that hasn't gotten heated up the way that the Bears have been able to put teams in the pressure cooker. And man, I know you were just saying, hi, how you doing? But the answer is I am stoked to see how this goes, because the Bears win this next Sunday, they could easily end up 8-8. And should fate align, maybe that means that you get a win in your end game with Green Bay in Week 18, and there would be no more cinematic way to end this season.
Yeah, it's unfortunate looking back on it that right now the Bears should be and could be 7-6, 2 games away. That were very not a game that that other teams won, but really the Bears lost. It's a shame because right now you are kind of in control, and if you're anywhere near 7-6 and on the way to like 9 to 10 wins, I think this is an absurdly successful season comparatively to what me and Paulie were really expecting. Even the last few weeks, I've just been rooting for wins. I have no interest in draft picks anymore, and I'm just rooting for wins.
That was my thing at the beginning of the year. I said, I don't care so much about how sloppy this year is going to be. I want wins. This is what's important to me this year. I was willing to take a step back last year and sacrifice the wins for the draft pick. And everybody saw what that panned out to, another potential first overall pick. So it was definitely worth doing last year. However, 2 years in a row, I don't feel comfortable sitting there rooting for my team to lose. The crazy part is that when we look back at our predictions, me and David both had them around 7 wins. Mm-hmm. And then in that 7 wins, though, we had them winning 2 games in the first 4 weeks. So for this team to go 0-4 and still be in a position where they can not only get 7 wins, but more after starting 0-4 is actually a very, very positive end result here.
What I've found frustrating about this season, and Dave, you kind of hinted at it, you gave me a springboard I wanted to just dive into, is that I would argue this team has been near best case scenario in terms of talent development. Darnell Wright is a year ahead of schedule. Braxton Jones seems like the real deal, a player who I'm not allowed to legally name because if the moment I do, I'll jinx him, has been healthy all year, save his early IR stint. And he's been the best lineman on the Bears, which has been awesome. And that's just the offensive line. Like, that's before we talk about a defensive line where Andrew Billings is playing like Dexter Lawrence light. That's before we talk about Montez Sweat and the addition that he's meant. That's before we talk about Kyler Gordon's resurgence. Jalen Johnson stepped forward into a corner 1. I mean, truly, a Bears fan with an Xbox couldn't build a team with this much talent on it. And yet they're 5-8. You are allowed to be very disappointed. I would argue that the way that this Bears schedule is worked out, you could tell me that this Bears team should be 8-5, and I would agree with you because that Buccaneers game was right there for the taking. And if you don't want to give them the Buccaneers game, how about the Saints game where they had 4 opportunities to tie the game and instead went 0-4 in critical situations? Everybody wants to focus on just Denver and just the Lions game. There were so many more opportunities that the Bears didn't capitalize on. And now they're just playing too well to lose. Like, at this stage, the defense is basically playing so well that to lose would just be a dang shame, right? It's a funny scenario to be looking at because I still think this team's record is seriously underperforming. I don't know where else to assign the blame on that than the head coaching, but the roster couldn't be in better shape. You know what I mean?
Me and Paulie are kind of football fans produced by the 2000s, like Tom Brady,
right?
Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, right? And I think the 2000s broke our brains in the sense of the quarterback position because I think you just got used to seeing like 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks from like multiple guys.
Right.
And I think that era was kind of just like defined by the fact that there was a few guys that were exceptional and they could kind of take advantage of guys who were just out there playing football. Right now, I feel like the quarterback position has caught up to the rest of the league where you kind of have to treat it like any other position. If a guy shines in his rookie year, great. If he's not by year 2, then there's something to worry about, like a receiver or running back or any other position. And then by year 3, if the guy's just not there, the guy's just not there.
In an interview with Tom Brady, he spoke about how when he entered the league, the rules were so much more against them, and over time, the officiating has gone towards the quarterback position to make it easier. And he said he feels that younger quarterbacks don't have to play as well in order to be good nowadays, whereas he had to. And he lived through that transition. So I think the talent gap between all quarterbacks is a lot smaller than it used to be. That's why we're seeing guys like Brock Purdy able to come into the league and succeed.
It's a team game. I mean, it seems as if, like you're talking about, during around 2008 to 2017, it was as if people wanted to act as if the offense is one player while the defense is 11. Right. But it's always been an 11-on-11 game. And especially as defenses starting around, I would argue, about Patrick Mahomes' tenure. Yeah, I do think it's him. The defense has started shifting away from copying the Legion of Boom and what they were able to do through cover 3 and shift into more cover 2, cover 4 looks. And that's incentivized dinking and dunking. So what do you need if you're going to dink and dunk? You need playmakers. You need guys that are going to be able to punish you in the open field. It's part of why DJ Moore is so well fit for the current edition of the league. Is he Jamar Chase, like in terms of copy paste? No, he's basically a running back with a wide receiver skill set, and he's been dominant because when he breaks a tackle, there's nobody there to take him away. And it's awesome to see that the Bears are adding playmakers like that because it helps nearly any quarterback that they field play really well. Now, it's funny that you mentioned the top quarterback versus everybody else argument, if only because we have still seen the Super Bowl winner either be the current existing best quarterback in the league. At a time, it was Brady. Now it's Patrick Mahomes, or it is a total grab bag of nearly anything else. Right? We've got Nick Foles. He won a Super Bowl. We've got Matt Stafford, top 10 quarterback, but right there on the line of top 10 quarterback. Right?
Joe Flacco.
And Joe Flacco. But exactly. Exactly. There is a host of other guys that seem to reach the Super Bowl, but when you're not a top 10 quarterback, it seems as if you lose the game. Now, there's honestly not enough Super Bowls for us to really draw definitive conclusions, right? Like it's too much of a guessing game to predict exactly what gets you through the tournament. But I agree with you in practice that you need a good team. You can't be fielding Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Sky Moore and Rashee Rice and calling it a day. That just doesn't work. And there's an argument to be made that it never quite did, that guys like Julian Edelman, Wes Welker shined brighter than we gave them credit for at the time. But we can also leave that aside and say the way that defenses at that moment were defending the run game like hell on earth meant that you had open passing seams that a lot of these quarterbacks just don't get right now in 2023. It's a complex nut to crack, but to your point, the run game and your ability to work underneath matters a lot more than it used to. It's why before he broke, Mac Jones was looking as successful as he was. Now Brock Purdy and plenty of others that are more that distributed point guard player are starting to shine, whereas big threats in different forms and fashions are finding it harder to win on a down-to-down basis.
Your theory of team building, right, is do you stick with Justin Fields and, go and add, if you trade the first overall pick, you're probably getting 3 first-round picks out of it. So you're probably drafting 3 first-round talents that next draft, and then versus now you have Caleb Williams plus maybe one, pass rusher or a toy for him. But I think that was just my roundabout way of like, will that exceptional rookie potentially take you further than a better team and then a plug and play quarterback? I think just based on how we're asking this question, you can kind of feel the way we feel about it,
Totally.
Which is we've just been preaching the Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen model, and even arguably Patrick Mahomes, because those were like 10, 9, 11 win teams before they even plugged those guys in.
Think about this. Tom Brady, in the middle of his career, when he went out, what did that team go?
Bad.
11-5 with Matt Castle. So if that doesn't say something, like even throughout his career, he was surrounded by a good team. And that is the overall plan to success. I mean, that's the one team that sat there and won Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl over and over.
So if there's one thing about the Justin Fields quandary that I think is really complicated, it's that Fields is a very, very niche quarterback. Like you're saying, right now, the total package is without a doubt a top 10 starting quarterback. You're looking at a super athlete that can hit huge shots downfield, especially when players like DJ Moore get open for them. So what's not to like? Well, we just described that the league is trending towards dink and dunk, like make a play here and there, facilitate your offense quarterbacking. And that doesn't feel as if it's Justin Fields' strong suit at this point, which doesn't mean Fields can't work. It just means look at a game like Sunday, and there's the whole package all rolled into one. Fields took, what do you think, guys? 5 absolutely ferocious hits. That's not to amalgamate all of the hits total, right?
But
That's
Robert,
just talking about the nasty ones.
You study the tape,
right?
I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. I just feel there's consistently missed layups when we're talking about dump offs. We saw a couple passes last game that were just high for no reason. It was short passes.
Totally. But I also, to kind of what Dave is saying, want to make it clear that Fields isn't the only one that misses some of these. Jared Goff played a really poor game against the Bears, and the Bears were exposing, in my opinion, his poor eyes. I mean, Jared Goff has always had trouble with when the defense changes, especially while Jared Goff is feeding play action in some capacity. And the Bears basically challenged him to make more than a half field read within 3 seconds. And Jared really struggled to do it. So I don't want to make it sound as if what we're putting on Justin Fields is you have to be the perfect quarterback or else you're out. It's not that simple, right? But when you do pass on a top prospect, the question becomes, is that guy going to facilitate a better passing attack? Is that what you want to do going forward? And honestly, I'm not trying to push anybody towards one thing or another. Not right now, because Fields at this moment is playing really well. I mean, he's certainly upping his trade value in a worst case scenario, or he's giving you something that you can build on. And my question that I would be asking if I was Ryan Poles is, do we think we can sustain this long term? Or are we heading towards a point where Fields' body is going to give out and we're going to end up left with a team that is ready to win, playing a backup trying to do it? Now, that backup might succeed. There was a point where Jalen Hurts backed up Carson Wentz. There was a point where Brock Purdy backed up Jimmy Garoppolo. Like you guys are talking about, having somebody waiting in the wings is not impossible when you get 3 first-round picks in the 2024, 2025, and 2026 drafts. There's just a lot of ways to do this. And the good news is that I believe that both paths basically convene at the same point where we want a team that's ready to roll around the quarterback. The good news is the Bears team right now is playing pretty good ball. Like, if you put a rookie quarterback in with this team, plus the Malik Neighbors pick that you're talking about, Dave, or whatever other prospect you wanted to fit in there, add a center in the free agency, make the moves that everybody on Twitter keeps talking about, right? You're going to end up with a team that might not have the history that the Kansas City Chiefs did when they replaced Alex Smith with Patrick Mahomes, but you should have a team that matches that talent level. And if you want proof, just take a look at the Patriots. Just take a look at the Giants. Those are much more normal situations for a high-touted rookie to fall into. I think that either way, no matter what happens, I doubt Ryan Poles is going to make a million friends in Chicago, but I also think that nearly any person, this is my hope anyways, that whatever happens, people are going to come around to it. Because whether it's the people that wanted to stick with wanted to stick with Fields that don't get their way, or the people that wanted a new quarterback that don't get their way, I tend to think the Bears are going to have a team that's capable of winning quite a few games regardless come 2024 and 2025 and 2026. The foundation looks really well set right now, which I'm shocked I'm able to say. This is Chicago. They don't do that.
Like, the Fields in the first pick discussion is going to be like a distraction until the draft happens. It's unavoidable. Okay, it's going to be a distraction. I don't want to speak on the potential new QB, because even if you have the first pick and you take Drake May and then you missed out on Caleb Williams, like this draft previous showed us that, like, and me and Paulie have never said anything other than one of my favorite phrases of his is just get more darts for the dartboard.
Receivers this year. Look at the wide receivers taken this year. The guys
Yeah.
producing the most, or the what? The guys taking the latest.
It's frustrating. Honestly, I think, because everything feels as easy as get more darts for the dartboard and then bada boom, you're good to go. But it becomes funny when you take a look at all these first round contracts. First round contracts are like a mid-tier free agent. Like, they're not that cheap in the wide world of things. If the player is really good, absolutely they are. The number one overall pick isn't even cheap. Like, it's cheap for a quarterback, but you're going to be paying, let's say it's Caleb Williams, $10 million a year over the next 4 years, like each year. It's cheaper than paying, say, Justin Fields $50 million a year, but quarterback's expensive, right? Let alone if you pick another position, Marvin Harrison making $7 million a year, it's going to feel cheap to some people if he gets the usage. And it feels so funny to me looking around the league, because I'm amazed at how good the Bears look right now. I mean, call me crazy if you want to. You're more than welcome to, because this feels like every time the Bears win, we get a little too high on the team. But it surprises me, guys, looking around the league, where if you want to be frustrated with the Bears' level of talent, you're more than welcome to. The rest of the league is not that good. You know what I mean?
We did a poll. We literally went through every single team and we did a ranking of situations. And it's completely subjective, but we're just like, whose situation would you rather have overall as a package? You can replace head coaches. Head coaches get replaced by good teams. But in terms of like talent and then draft capital and then all of the contracts and all that stuff, we put it at like what, 14th best situation in the league. You know, I don't like this conversation of Williams versus Fields, because it's never going to be, it's a question that you can't even get an answer to, not when it gets drafted, but like 2 years after that, because then you have to see how Williams shakes out and how Fields looks on his new team.
You can't even get a good answer now. Like,
that's exactly.
It's simple as let's use some pretend scenarios, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're Ryan Poles and you go out and you get an unsanctioned dinner with Caleb Williams because you have the first overall pick. And yeah, people cheat. Get over it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And as you're sitting at dinner, you've got, say, Atlanta, right, burning a hole in your pocket. Their GM has been calling and calling and calling, saying, I don't care what you're asking for. You want Drake London, 3 firsts, a second round pick? Done. Like, take it. And as you're sitting there with Caleb Williams, kind of gives you the vibe that he just doesn't really care that much. Suddenly, your decision's made. It's that easy, right? On the other side of things, maybe you're sitting at the same dinner with Caleb Williams. The guy is wowing you, saying everything you could possibly want. And you got a separate GM. I don't know. Let's say it's the Raiders make a little bit of sense for this. And they want to give you a first and a third for Justin Fields. Is the decision made at that point if you're getting insane value for the quarterback you already have? We don't know. We don't know any of this. We don't know what these guys' characters are like. We don't know what the trade packages that are going to get offered are going to be. But I have a feeling that the market value of whatever Fields is going to end up gathering from other teams is going to play a lot of a role in this. Because the moment that, to your point, you get 3 first-round picks in this draft alone, maybe the calculus changes. But it's just not that simple. And everybody keeps trying to simplify it.
Like, it sounds like the worst decision is to like keep Fields and keep the first pick. So if you're keeping Fields and taking Marvin Harrison, that sounds probably like the worst value added.
That's probably the worst one. You got to trade down from number 1 at that point.
Right. So like, do you think that this conversation at this point has a negative effect on the locker room or Fields' mentality or Fields' desire to stay here? Do you think there is any, because I feel like the only backdoor shenanigan we could hear about is that the entire time Ryan Poles just texts Justin Fields or sees him after, you know, on a Monday or Tuesday and goes like, dude, you got to ignore all this because I swear to God, we're not getting rid of you.
A lot of people are acting like this has to happen right now. Like, we still have another year with Fields and then potentially a 5th-year option. And so it doesn't have to happen right now. The reason why we feel that way is the pressure from having another first overall pick in back-to-back years.
I see a lot of people that make it look like either option is super duper dire, right? The Bears are in the middle of a rebuild and half their players are ahead of schedule. Like, call me crazy, but if they didn't have many resources, I would still feel pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good about the future of the team. And now their roster is playing out as if they spent all their cap and even front or backloaded a bunch of their deals. And instead, they've got nearly $100 million in cap space once you cut Cody Whitehair and unfortunately part with Eddie Jackson, right? And once you do that, you've got quite a tidy sum to spend in free agency. The quarterback thing is so funny because I keep hearing it called really risky, and I don't want to take away from you. You got this pick for freezies, more or less. I know you traded for it, but you don't have to trade up. You didn't even have to lose to get to this point. Another
Right. It's
team,
not like you have these back-to-back picks because you suck back-to-back years. No,
Right.
you sucked the 1 year. Right.
you
Correct.
sucked the 1 year, and then you managed to take the best weapon away from a team who drafted arguably the wrong quarterback. I'm not a big Bryce Young guy and never really was, but I'm trying not to victory lap because that's just no fun. Like, that's just great dancing, right?
Results are results.
So you end up with this team that, like you're talking about, you mentioned this, Paul. I think it's hilarious. They're a team that is losing so emphatically that they're going to wrap up number one early at this rate. Like, they couldn't even do us a favor and take it to the end of the season and make us like consider that the Bears would have this, that, or the other. The Patriots and the Cardinals even stepped out of the way over the last couple of weeks. It's honestly pretty frustrating because, like you're talking about, that there are people, I saw this on Reddit the other day. I thought it was hilarious. There are people that are now beginning to act like the Bears having a top 2 pick is an outright bad thing. And it's like, no, this is a great thing, regardless of what happens with it. It's like you couldn't ask for a better asset. And I believe this is really, I guess, my core, that whether you took the rookie or not, you are going to build this team up. It's just a matter of which direction are you going to use it, right? Are you going to pour one of your biggest resources in an attempt to upgrade your core passing game? Because Justin Fields as a quarterback is a very unusual quarterback. He buffs out your run game. Like, I don't know what language you use to speak, right? But I can always think of like video game statistics and little bonuses and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, Justin Fields is a multiplier on the ground. He is outstanding in that department. You play man against him, you're going to get a lot of the same results that you got in this last Lions game, where early on, I don't know that Justin Fields was seeing what was going on downfield outstandingly well. It didn't matter. If Aiden Hutchinson tries to arm tackle him in the pocket, Justin Fields is going to get out of that. He's going to sprint upfield, and in the blink of an eye, he has 20 yards. Nobody else can do that in the league. Like,
yeah, David mentioned in week 1 how the Packers are a very man coverage team, and they played like 95% zone against Fields.
Exactly.
That is the game plan.
And that's where this gets questionable. And we'll see what happens over the next 4 games because the Lions are man heavy to a fault. Fields played 2 really strong games against the Lions. In the middle of that was a Minnesota game where it felt as if, sure, the team around him didn't have a phenomenal outing. But if there becomes, I think you guys would agree, a book on how to beat Fields, we would all agree that's a problem. But it's the wrong week to say that because Fields looked like a dynamo against the Lions. And if he could do that against a flagging Browns team and a Cardinals team that's not a very strong defense and an Atlanta Falcons defense that's also not all that great, well, then it sounds like it would take a pretty good defense to put Fields in a bind, and that becomes a different conversation. There's an element of risk either way, right? Because if we do all this, we get to 8-8, we go up against the Packers, Fields scores 13 points. In yet another 27-13 game where everybody just goes, I cannot believe I got excited for this, right? Then we're all going to have ice in our souls as we just stare down the barrel of 2 risky decisions, right? But like you're talking about, Paul, I think there are just so many positive things we can talk about that aren't how are the Bears going to screw up the quarterback, because we're so scarred as Bears fans over the last 10 years that we're always going to look at the negative. And I can't help but see this as, if Fields distinguishes himself, you're good.
Like to say, hey, the book is out on Fields and everything like that, but it's on a good coaching staff to know that, hey, if this is my player's weakness, right, we need to devise a game plan that attacks the strength. So
absolutely,
like the Lions game, and this is me and Paulie have been making this point for weeks at this point. With Tyson Bagent, you see just a completely different concept. You see a lot of heavy run game. You see a lot of bootleg play action levels concepts where we talk about taking layups, taking dinks and dunks. When Luke gets Justin Fields back in there, he goes, All right, Aaron Rodgers, West Coast time again, but with some option plays and some RPOs and maybe some QB runs. Luke Getsy gets Justin Fields back, and he just goes back to his old shenanigans that he feels like Justin Fields should be able to execute by now. Whereas, like with Tyson Bagent, I felt like he simplified, played to his strengths, things like that. And I think yesterday was the first time that we watched a game where I liked seeing Deontay Foreman get to run the hell out of the ball while Justin Fields is also in the game. So like you're attacking teams in ways that at the end of the day to me is just terrible coaching. I mean, when you see Luke Getsy get put in a box, the withering, the way he withers at the end of the game when he played against Minnesota or Tampa
It was so bad.
and he just couldn't figure it out. It's so painful to watch a guy just go, I don't know. I got nothing else. I got nothing left. And I think that's why to the nuance of it is like, I think the thing that just makes the most sense, the value, and Brian Poles has preached value forever. And is Justin Fields the value choice, or is a first overall pick with a 5-year contract the value choice? So do you feel like if we're just following the model of value, which Ryan Poles has been at least pretty consistent on doing things through value, even overpaying for a defensive end, which I was not a fan of the Montez Sweat trade, totally eating my words. I totally see the value in it 3-4 weeks later already. Paying for a defensive end, that's a value position. Paying for a cornerback potentially should be a value position that you overpay for. Where do you see, just applying the logic of Ryan Poles, what is the value move at the quarterback position moving forward?
I honestly couldn't tell you because we're not in the coaching room. To your exact point, you said all this earlier. I actually think there's a common thread when we look at what's going on with Luke Getsy, right? Because Luke Getsy, we got to give him his flowers. He seems to start every game with a nearly idealized attack. That script that they come up with rules, and somebody has to get credit for it.
Last year, the Bears were the number 1 team in scoring opening drives throughout the 2022 season.
They do. And I mean, go back to Tampa. What did the Bears expect to happen? They expected to get the snot blitzed out of them. So they basically set up a bunch of semi-condensed formations and then hot dropped a bunch of people into protection so that they could pick up all the blitzes that Tampa threw at them. Suddenly Fields sees a clearer field because instead of 7 in coverage, there's 5, finds DJ Moore in the flat. He races up the sidelines. And what do you know? The Bears are in the end zone. They have a habit of doing that. Right? You give Fields a crease, he will run for minimum 5 yards. You give Fields a lot of space to throw into via a blitz, like you take guys out of coverage, Fields can find that guy who has crazy separation. There's a reason Fields kills the blitz. It's not because he's getting the ball out fast. It's because, honest to God, Luke Getsy actually does a decent job of allowing the protection scheme the freedom to pick blitzes up. And they do it more than I've seen a lot of teams. And if you need any proof, watch the Bears defense. Their blitzes are killing teams right now. Like, picking up blitzes is hard. The Bears seem as if they are really struggling when teams just shift to 7-drop zone. And there's one team that just doesn't do that. I couldn't tell you why the Lions refuse to do it. A lot of defensive coordinators seem as if they follow the motto of we do what we do because we do it. And that's how we operate. It
stems from their head coach down. We're tough. We're tough. We're going to smash you in the mouth. Play man to man.
And while I respect the idea, it has meant that, like you're talking about, Dave, Luke Getsy's offense actually looks like it kind of works against a team that's running mostly man. So I can't help but look at a game like Minnesota. Minnesota right now is, if you will, my like circled example of this. You could tell Fields and Getsy don't get along. What does the front office think? Like, who do they think has the point? You know what I mean? We aren't in these meeting rooms. So do they feel as if they have better answers? You've seen it in the Minnesota game. I actually thought their passing attack had answers, but like you're talking about, Dave, are they Justin Fields' answers? Can Justin Fields' way he plays football fit into an attack that's going up against zone? Or do you have to hit those dink and dunk creases and have playmakers that are going to account for this? We're not going to know because we get Justin Fields out of the moment. And Justin Fields is an extremely smart player that once he's seen the tape can articulate very clearly exactly what he should have done at times. And it makes it weird because this ultimately comes down to what does Fields do and how does Fields operate within the critical 3 seconds he needs to make a play. And I'm not going to obsess over it. I'm kind of done obsessing over it. I would argue that we know what Fields is. He's going to be a barrel of fun, especially as we roll into a team or a series of teams where the Bears defense should give the Bears offense surprisingly good field position. And all the Bears offense has to do is capitalize on some of their opportunities. And more than likely, they'll roll to a bunch of wins. What do the Bears do at quarterback? I mean, I have what I think is my preferred option, but ultimately you're not going to hear it here because I'm going to leave it to Ryan Poles.
Like, I've thought this in the back of my head, not necessarily maybe articulated it as well, is that, like we said, we all thought Matt Eberflus was a joke and needed to go. And now all of a sudden the guy honestly looks like a genius. And even when you hear things like Montez Sweat saying, I love playing for this guy, I love playing, like, I think he's a genius and I love his passion and this and that. We don't know, because we could be thinking that Luke Getsy is an absolute buffoon, and everyone in the room is thinking, well, Fields really needs to hit these throws because Luke's putting him in a position that we think or we see is successful. And I think the only breadcrumbs that you get off of this is when you watch a Tyson Bagent start. And what is Luke Getsy seeing? What is Luke Getsy doing differently with Tyson Bagent? And does Luke Getsy, if he keeps his job and everybody thinks that he's the genius here and Fields is the problem, do you need to draft a first overall or a second overall pick? Or can you get a Bagent in the 3rd round and just have him sit there for 3 or 4 years? Like, all this is unknown. Personally, I've never seen an offensive coordinator who is supposed to be a genius. And even if he is a genius on some level and to somebody in that room, you got to be able to adjust better than that.
I feel like that's what it comes down to, is adjustments. I feel like you said they get a hot start, but the problem is failure to adjust. And David, with you talking about value, when we look at the value of the situation, it's a lot easier to replace an offensive coordinator than it is a quarterback, right? So
a lot easier.
And when you look at the whole thing overall, though, the reason why I feel better about it is because against the Tampa Bay game early on, there was plenty of blame to go around. You could blame, put blame on the defense, put blame on Justin Fields, put blame on the play calling. And I felt like there was blame all around for a while, but not anymore. Now the defense is playing good. Now Justin Fields is taking steps forward. And I feel like we're starting to find exactly what the weak link here is. And if we go into the offseason with at least, if we go into the offseason not confused about our situation, then that's a lot easier of a fix, especially value-wise, moving forward. You could sit there and say, well, okay, we figured out that if we could just get a better play caller. And like you said, Robert, we know what Justin Fields is. To be honest with you, this isn't the time for developing anymore. Like, you're in the NFL, year 3. You don't get much more of an opportunity than that. And, the only reason Fields has got it is based off his physical skill set and his draft status. Like, you need to make the most of your opportunities, and you're getting into a part of your career here where, listen, if you can't make these dump off throws accurately by now, you can hope that sure you still develop your game a little bit better and get better at that. However, we know what you're good at, so we need to devise a game plan towards what you're good at, not towards what we hope you get better at.
It's the complex relationship between do you use your play calling to challenge a player to grow? Best example I could possibly give you, the Bears have nearly never given Darnell Wright chip help unless they thought the edge rusher across from him was amazing. They have from day one never offered him chip help because that's not his job. His job is to be a top 10 pick playing tackle, to be on his own, to be the island guy, so that you can chip the left tackle Braxton Jones's man and keep everything in check. It kind of worked. Like, yeah, you had some rough weeks going forward, but by giving Darnell Wright the whole enchilada up front, you basically allowed him to struggle and then improve. Tyreek Stevenson, same thing. They never really offered him a ton of help out there, but slowly but surely, as he took his licks, he's gotten better. So do you handcuff yourself to what Justin Fields has shown you that he is confident in, or do you push the envelope the moment you pass on number one? Even if it's the most optimal decision to trade out of number one, it might not be the most optimal for Ryan Poles and maybe Matt Eberflus, right? Because the moment you commit to Fields, you have to show results very quickly. The moment you trade Fields and move on to a rookie quarterback, realistically, you're going to get 3 years. Maybe some of the fans will be super mad, right? But some of the fans were super mad when you got rid of Mitch. They'll get over it, especially when we know this is the truth. They're going to be, what do you guys think? 50% of current hardcore Fields believers that will suddenly have always been fans of whoever the Bears take at number one, if that's what happens, right?
Well, they're definitely not
Right.
watching any damn Falcons or Raiders game when he gets traded there, so they can shut up and like
But a
stop,
lot of people don't
because
also
they'll
go
become
as
the
in
biggest
depth.
Caleb Williams fans.
The biggest Caleb Williams fan. Exactly. And it's all more to say that I think there's a lot of layers to this. I don't even know if the most optimal decision for the organization is the question. Because for Ryan Poles, whoever whoever starts a quarterback in 2024 is now your guy. You could pass. You reasonably could pass on Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. Both had major draft question marks. Just because CJ Stroud looks amazing now doesn't change the fact that he had nearly 20 games at Ohio State where he looked afraid of pressure and one where he didn't. Why should we have known that how he played against Georgia was exactly how he was going to play damn near every game in the NFL, right?
Yeah.
But so you trade down, you make the team better, absolutely defensible move. If you let Caleb Williams go and he's a star, Justin Fields is your guy. And you live and die by what he produces, probably in year 4. I wouldn't be surprised if you have to extend it.
Yeah, but there's also a situation where, because of how good the other draft picks and the free agent signings are performing, that as Ryan Poles, you can sit there and make a case going, okay, we sat there and we lived through his contract. We lived through his rookie contract to year 4. And now we're going to sit here and, reach out for a veteran quarterback and have a better chance of keeping our jobs with a guy that knows what he's doing. They can at least dink and dunk like the league is dictating and whatnot, because we built up the talent on the roster. So yeah, there's, like you said, there's a lot of pass.
And like, first of all, we all know for the Bears and the McCaskies and all that, like every GM kind of gets like 2 to 3 bites at the apple. The second one's usually the one that matters, and the third one is kind of like a dying whisper kind of thing.
Unless you're Phil Emery and you bomb it.
Yeah,
unless you're Ryan Pace and you just keep hitting time extension, but keep going.
But that's part of it, right? Is like you get, Ryan Pace or, Ryan Poles. Like if you're starting your second bite of the apple with your new QB in year 3, arguably, I think that's a bit early to take that second big bite. I think one more year with Fields in the rebuild, and then you take your big bite of the apple. I think that's because even then you can take, an unhappy quarterback like Justin Herbert and say, hey, we'll give you Fields at a first round pick and we just swap quarterbacks or something. That's where you can take that risky bite of the apple. The second part of that is, yeah, you lock yourself into it. And then this is one of those things that we keep talking about as if we're playing everything as if it's to be predicted. And then for all we know, the wrench that could just be thrown right in is Kevin Warren doesn't like Matt Eberflus, no matter how well he finished the season. Matt Eberflus is gone, and Ryan Poles and Kevin Warren's favorite guy is Ben Johnson or Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh comes in and he goes, I'm not taking the job unless I get Caleb Williams.
Yeah, no, then you have
I'm not taking the job unless I get Drake May.
Right. Then you have
and this is my darling, and this is the coach I know that will set us up for the next 5 to 10 years, and he don't want Fields.
To your point.
Or there's a quarterback or there's a coach out there that just Jim Harbaugh goes, you're telling me I get to have Colin Kaepernick 2.0? If you trade Fields, I'm not taking this job. So a lot of this is also just variable, like effect on trickle down stuff of Ryan Poles could love Justin Fields, but the guy that's the coach that he loves is like, I'm not a huge fan. Can we get a first from Atlanta?
And I'll finish on this. Everything you just mentioned is why I think the next 4 games are going to be absolutely psycho crazy. And it's also, in my opinion, part of why next week's game against the Browns is honestly probably the biggest win-win of the season. If the Bears lose against the Browns, okay, chances are Matt Eberflus has bowed out, right? It's a brutal league, but right now, Matt Eberflus probably has to run the table to reasonably, not all the way, but at least you have to start there, right? You beat the Lions. You did the thing. You can't just drop games again. Because while you might be on schedule with what we all predicted early, you're stuffing all these wins in the back when Ryan Poles' roster looks so ready to go and you have that number 1 overall pick, and you're going to have agents calling you, whispering, out of turn, right? Saying, hey, my guy would love to coach for you guys. And those are the kinds of calls that I tend to think are going to weigh on George McCaskey, Ryan Poles, and Kevin Warren. And so I think, to your exact point, Dave, you nailed this. The biggest problem here is that the Bears have to be a year early if they are going to make a move. It feels unnatural because it is unnatural. They got the number 1 overall pick on accident. I don't even think when they traded for DJ Moore and a future first, they dreamed of a world where the Panthers would be this dysfunctional, right? So if you're going to move on from Matt Eberflus, you have to do so partially because of the opportunity that the coaching hire presents you. Like, to your point, I think Caleb Williams with Matt Eberflus is a very weird mixture, right? But also a new head coach with Justin Fields feels equally weird to me. Like, sticking with the whole squad or getting a whole new squad feels a lot more natural. So what do the Bears want to do?
Yeah, Justin Fields then becomes the guy who's had 3 offensive coordinators in 4 years, and